even the second season G managed to really up the ante in spectacle, while not forgetting the story that keeps things coherent. Hint, freaking hint.
Why don't you have a seat? Okay, so once more, I need to desperately say something before getting into the show, because even after the last 2 episodes, this one is easily my most biased episode of Rewatch so far, and will very likely stay such for a long time. Thing is, as you may be able to tell by the everything, I utterly despise this season of Symphogear. This hatred, however, is entirely my own fault, and stems from the same reasons that make me love Symphogear as a whole, as I've described especially in my video to Season 1. I'll get more into how the story ties into this, and stick to talking about my original experience with the show in this segment. Thing is, GX simply came at the wrong time. Thanks to Symphogear, I had begun acquiring a wider horizon, and started developing a taste at anime. After G, I actively followed developments around Symphogear, and thus obviously heard about the 3rd season being in the works. Of course, as the youngling I was back then, still occupied by the wonders of the world of Symphogear, my brain immediately started rattling down all kinds of possibilities on how the story should continue. I had come up with enough ideas to easily fill a good 10 more seasons if they were fleshed out.
I should probably check how many of those have ended up in XDU by now.
I want to stress again that this is entirely my own fault, but it doesn't change anything about the outcome. Senki Zesshou Symphogear GX was the first anime I was hyped for, and it miserably failed to deliver. So, after a figurative roller coaster and a literal train ride, how does GX introduce us to the world of Symphogear? What? What? Whoa. Okay, so keeping with the amount of rising spectacle, we literally rip a space shuttle out of not quite orbit, see on the side that last season's villains are captured, take the neck off K2, give global warming a hand, suplex that same space shuttle, and make it totally not set everything in a 5-kilometer radius on fire. And that's only the first 6 minutes. Afterwards, we spend just as much time in civilian lives and end up getting ourselves into this season's concert scene, which actually goes surprisingly smoothly for once. But who am I kidding? Of course, something goes wrong, and as Maria is on her way to leave the show, she gets attacked without usable gear since she is still captured, and Tsubasa needs to rescue her on short notice, initiating a high-speed, not noise TM chase through London. Parallel to this, Hibiki and Chris are clearing an apartment complex that was partially blown up by an enemy attack, and as things begin to literally and figuratively cool down, we are introduced to this season's villains. A magic lolly and her army of sex dolls. From here on out, this season definitely makes some large changes to the underlying formula the first two seasons set up. There's a lot more focus on constantly keeping the story going at all times without settling on a single point for too long, with the appropriately raised amount of action to go along with it. Of course, there's still pretty clear arcs going on and some strong pivotal points, but overall GX tells its story in a much more homogeneous and fluent way than Season 1 and G did, resulting in a pretty strong focus on the high-octane fights and set pieces that the latter brought into the franchise. GX also addresses one of the main criticisms I gave Season 1, namely being that,
I do have to concede, an actual failure thrown somewhere in there would have been very nice.
The Symphogear users lose a lot in this season. The enemy's tactics and abilities directly counter those used in Symphogear combat and easily overpower them. This leads to something new being introduced in GX, the addition of a seasonal power-up into the formula. It's arguable that this was already present in Season 1's X-Drive and Hibiki's ability in G to redirect foreign Zeshous, but with the Ignite module powered by a fragment of Dainsleif, the Symphogears gain an all-around power-up with the added ability to overcome the immense strength of their enemies. Ignite is, in all honesty, a very nice addition to the Symphogear system, since it also has a drawback in how it works, practically sending the user into a controlled berserk mode that can only be used for that long until unspoken consequences hit the users. It's a solid system, works nicely as a power-up, obviously provides us with some more amazing balls-to-the-fucking-ceiling action, and gives us some really nice new gear designs. Unlike GX's redesigned classic gears. Jesus Christ, just look at what the fuck they did to them. New Zababa look really dope, though. The one thing Ignite miserably fails at, however, is one of the core pillars of Symphogear. The Ignite remixes of the character insert songs are atrociously bad dubstep remixes, with almost no regards given to the original track. An attempt at trend chasing that might have seemed sensible when the show aired in 2013, but definitely not something that has aged well at all. There's some okay ones in there, but overall they're definitely the lower cut of Symphogear music. Now, with that being said, don't get me wrong, the overall soundtrack of GX is absolutely amazing and actually manages to bring out the feeling of a Symphogear soundtrack beautifully. Much more so than G, which I criticized for that very point, but Ignite, while succeeding in concept and visual execution, misses that oh-so-vital auditory component so far that it ruins the experience whenever it's on screen. To me, this is very much a common theme in GX, as the writing I've previously cited as not necessarily good, but definitely firm, begins to fall apart in this season. This is not just the core story bit, but the general writing quality overall. The main example here would be Tsubasa's and Hibiki's character arcs, where they both have a confrontation with their father figures. For Tsubasa, we learn a considerably sized bit about her backstory, but the arc ends way too soon, as in, it only actually occupies one episode and then festers around for a whole season's worth of time before being brought up again, and in a way that doesn't really fit anything of what we had just learned or known about her before. Hibiki's arc, on the other hand, focuses on her accidentally reuniting with her father after he left her family due to the societal pressure of Hibiki surviving the Zweiwing incident. This arc is built up a lot better from the beginning of the season and runs for much longer, all the way beyond the climax, but it too somewhat fails in its execution as it's thoroughly rushed, with good old Top Dad getting way too little screen time for the audience to want to see him redeem himself, and with that for his eventual change of heart to actually matter. These arcs are very nicely comparable via a metaphor that used to be flung around with games a lot, so let's go with that. Hibiki's arc is as wide as an ocean, but as deep as a puddle, while Tsubasa's arc is like one of those lake drains that people used to really like to abuse for clickbait. Deep as fuck, but ultimately there's not much in it. One thing I have to unilaterally praise GX for is its main villains. While I personally think they are actually the worst overall from a storytelling perspective, Carol, and mainly the auto-scorers, make up for it by being by far the best villainous personalities the show has seen up until this point. Carol is a stubborn little child made immortal by the power of alchemy, driven to destroy the world to follow the task given to them by their father while he was burned at the stake to understand the world. The autoscorers, on the other hand, are mere automatons, sent to destroy the Symphogears and gather data off them. Each of them is based on one of the basic elemental aspects of alchemy, which is also reflected in everyone's unique taste of deranged villainous personality. Now, back to the general topic of GX failing on execution, while the same can definitely not be said for its animation, I would go as far as to argue that the once more improved art style really falls flat. It looks absolutely beautiful, and the production values are definitely off the charts in comparison to G, and obviously especially the first season, but something about it is weirdly off-putting and doesn't scream Symphogear to me as much as it should. It's still a very unique style and definitely fits right in line with the previous season as a straight upgrade, but it sheds almost the entirety of the incredibly distinctive visual style of the original season, which was also still partially present in G. Now, this is where the juicy bit starts. While I won't go into the insane amount of detail I would love to go into to keep this video to an acceptable length, I think it's time to make good on the promise I've been pushing since the first episode of this whole ordeal. I don't and have never watched Symphogear for the same reasons most people do, so if you either don't want your future viewing experience with Symphogear to be lessened, or simply don't like contrarian opinions, please keep watching anyways. I would absolutely love to see your views on my opinions and to start a dialogue about this in the comments. Most people are in this show for the pure, unadulterated action, fun, and hype of it, others for the Yuri, bait, or any other combination of factors. The one you hear mentioned the least is understandably the story, as it never took much focus. Remember when I said,
Even with my undying love for this franchise, until the very rewatch I did when I originally wrote this video, I took a stance that made me ignore some of the greatest strengths of the entirety of Symphogear.
12-year-old me missed the memo that the story was not important. In a twist of mildly poetic irony, I was invested into trying to understand a world I didn't not only need to, but wasn't supposed to understand. My main point in favor of the story in Season 1 and G was that it being based around the time of Mesopotamia, the Bronze Age, the origins of history, a time we know little to nothing about, means that as a result, the lore is shrouded in a mild degree of actual mystery while not necessarily being inaccurate, just wildly exaggerated, which allows for a much stronger suspension of disbelief and resulting sense of immersion. GX, on the other hand, decides that it's time to ditch Babylon and move to the Middle Ages, also throwing old mythology out the window and swapping it out for alchemy. And here comes the problem. The last relevant Mesopotamian empire ended roughly 3,000 years ago if you're being generous. Alchemy begun roughly 1,500 years ago, and in many ways, despite being a pseudoscience, is still alive and kicking today. We understand alchemy, and with such, the inaccuracies that come from the rather sloppy writing of good old Kitty Robot over there start to be glaringly obvious, but those deserve their own entire video. With GX, the mystery and the lore, which was one of the main reasons I watched the show for, was simply gone, and the resulting inaccuracies rubbed salt into that wound as I'm someone who also has a solid basic understanding of alchemy. The main issue I have with these inaccuracies is that they actually somewhat work on a basic symbolic level, but begin to fall apart as you begin to look deeper into it in a very frustratingly clumsy way. I would love to give some really elaborate examples here, but that would take up way too much time, and is already a topic planned for a video that's pretty far in the way in the future, so I'm gonna have to ask you to hold on tight waiting for that. All in all, there is a lot more I could go into detail on for this video, like how I have a major distaste for how the second division is now called Song, and acts publicly under the UN, instead of a shadow organization of Japan, or how Hibiki keeps many of the abilities that were specifically made out to be a result of her being fused with Gungnir, which simply isn't the case anymore after the events of G. However, I am running out of time, and I feel like my point has been made. So, to follow through on the promise I made that kicked off this series 5 years ago, I'm gonna need to finish this one quickly. slightly heightened, 1 out of 5 daddy issues, fuck concerts, fuck swords, fuck song, fuck wind, fuck dubstep, fuck incest, fuck dolls, fuck daggers, fuck lesbians, fuck castles, fuck alchemy, fuck yo-yos, fuck fair, fuck genocide, fuck guns, fuck power plants, fuck universal instructions, fuck that noise, fuck fire, fuck black coffee, fuck berserk, fuck thinker, fuck death, fuck dying, fuck earth, fuck the apocalypse, fuck harps, fuck punching, fuck stones, fuck water, fuck shit, fuck me, fuck you, fuck GX.
やばいでーやばいでー感情使ったですね